Hello and welcome to Chakra News. I have with me on our channel today Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhary. We're going to be talking about the Air Chief Marshal's statements today about Operation Sindoor. Very big revelations coming out there. Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhary, break down for us the import of what the Air Chief Marshal just spoke today about Operation Sindoor, the losses that the PAF suffered in the operations.
Good evening, Sandeep. Great to be back with you once again. Yes, today has been quite a red letter day, I think, if I may say, for the Indian Air Force, where I think the facts have come out in an unequivocal manner by the Indian Air Force chief. And, over the last some months, there was so much of talk about the losses and what kind of damage we have done to the Pakistani Air Force. And I think that has been laid bare and laid clear. The first thing which comes to my mind is that I think it's been a very mature manner the whole thing was put out. There are points of view where people say that this could have been done much earlier. But frankly, if a nation and when a chief comes on and speaks on the air, he has to speak facts. And those facts have to be verified and sort of supported by proper analysis, which has been done. And in the absence of the fact that these damages and kills have taken place across the border, which brings about a challenge of battle damage assessment, where it becomes incredibly difficult to do so. And so one has to rely on alternate means of assessment, of electronic signals measures, a whole lot of other aspects, which track correlation on radar and other systems, and EW systems, which back it up. So it would have taken certain amount of analysis and to factually put on record what exactly kind of damage has been done by the Indian Air Force. And I think what has come out is spectacular, and it sort of underscores the fact what the Indian Air Force has been saying all along, that whatever it does, it puts it out in the open. It doesn't hide anything. And the fact that what we put across this time was a clear impact outcome of the strategic targeting which was carried out, offensive targeting deep inside the adversarial spaces, something which was never done, I think probably last done since in 1971. So I think it's been quite a day today.
Yeah, big day indeed, Air Marshal Choudhary. But the question that everyone's really asking is that why did it take the Air Force chief for so long to put it out there? It's been 3 months since Op Sindoor, and there have been driblets of information in the past. We've heard briefings where we mentioned that the PAF losses have been spoken about. But why 3 months later? You think it has to do with the timing or the way geopolitics is playing around with, say, Russia and the United States now, or was it all planned this way?
You make an interesting point, Sandeep, because what happens is in combat, the assessments and losses from either side is never let out by either side, frankly, till sort of things settle down. And this is still an operation or a threat, technically still an operation in progress. And it would have taken, like we discussed right in the beginning, that it would have taken some time to analyze it, but it wouldn't have taken so long. It should have been done much earlier. But there would have been certainly some other compulsions, which one can only speculate at this point in time. We can discuss about it in a manner, and we can discuss all kinds of possibilities, bordering from conspiracy theories to real factual situations. But yes, I think the geopolitics most certainly could have had a hand to play in this, and the timing, like you very rightly said. But also remember, he put it out in a very special occasion, which is an Air Force Association meeting in Bangalore, where all the veterans come together. So it is something, I think, which has also been bothering the veteran community for a long time. Okay, what really happened? And and unlike the past and the earlier days where it took a long time for the facts to come out, right. This is an information era where everyone is hungry and desperate for information.
Yes.
And when you don't fill those gaps, it brings about all kinds of speculation. So I think it's a combination of all kinds of aspects, but most certainly there would have been some other compulsions. I wouldn't say compulsions, or I would have said a circumstantial, push and pull from the geopolitics, like you mentioned, which could have led to this. And I mean, frankly, that is just a speculation on my part, and I think that is all I can probably say at this point in time. That yes, there could have been, you know, other factors leading to this statement coming out at this point in time.
Other factors, indeed, as they always are. But Air Marshal Chaudhary, there's another aspect of how the air chief mentioned a specific weapon system, which is the S-400, and he used that to talk about how the IAF has possibly carried out one of the longest surface-to-air missile kills in history. Probably 300 kilometers is what he's talking about. And I was looking at the evidence that we saw on OSINT, where basically there was some missile fragments of the 40 N6E, which is the longest range missile in the S-400 family, which is this, that was recovered in Dinga, a town in southern Punjab of Pakistan's province. So that kind of it establishes the fact that there were, in fact, multiple S-400 missiles that were fired. I'm just thinking of the time when the Air Force and, of course, the government literally stuck its neck out to buy the S-400 missile system in the face of possible US sanctions under Katre in 2018 and 19. You think that purchase is now, the risk that you took with that purchase is vindicated today with what the Air Force Chief just mentioned with the use of the S-400 in combat?
Most certainly, Sandeep. I mean, there is no doubt on that. And the point I would like to make here is that look at it from a different perspective. That means the Indian Air Force was well cognizant of the threat perception around. We had a BVR disadvantage for a little period when the Pakistani Air Force had obtained their AIM 120s, the AMRAAM missiles. And for a long time, we were very concerned about the Indian Air Force's air defense capability, because it is not just an Indian Air Force's air defense, it's a national air defense. And we had seen the weapon developments which have been going on all over. And with Pakistan getting increasingly, Pakistan for some time had been proclaiming that it's changed its strategy to offensive defense. So that essentially meant that it was developing its offensive capabilities, which meant that to safeguard the Indian skies and Indian airspace, we would need something which would be lethal, potent, and which could take out targets at long distances. So the Air Force would have done, and Air Force, I know for a fact, has done an immense amount of study on this, research on this, and we needed to, when we talk about an integrated air defense capability of a nation, it's a range of the entire range of weapon systems, not just sensors of an entire range from, which covers the entire volume of airspace in altitude, depth, and range and spread, but also need kinetic weapons to support that. And if you remember, we had discussed something about this in the past when we talked about the offensive air defense capability, and in which I had also mentioned that with this weapon system, the India's integrated air defense actually becomes an extended integrated air defense capability. And I think it's full marks to the Indian Air Force to have made a right weapon choice, and equally, kudos to the government to have dug its heels in and ensured we got the weapon system that we wanted, despite the American pressure. And I think that's been vastly vindicated.
Right, vastly vindicated indeed. And, that's a good expression, Air Marshal Chaudhary, offensive air defense capability that the S-400 system displayed. The fact that it's, while we think of, SAMs as air defense, in this case, we've used it as an offensive platform, given the huge range advantage it has. But, lastly, there's that point before I go, Air Marshal Chaudhary, I want to ask you, and this is something that we've discussed on our podcast, where the air chief mentioned the fact that you had the Indian political leadership that allowed the Air Force to do, whatever it needed to do with Operation Sindoor. You see that as a very, very big, development on the subcontinent, the fact that you have a political leadership that finally understands the use of offensive air power.
Sandeep, this is something which I've been speaking about for years, and I have written about it extensively, that historically, the Indian Air Force has been restrained and constrained in its operations, except, and all its wars, whether it was 47, 62, 65, except for 1971. Even in Kargil, we discussed this before, that we were constrained from going across the LOC. But this time around, I think Balakot was the crossing of the Rubicon, literally, where we actually took the fight to the enemy camp. And that's an offensive outlook, which is a heartening sort of aspect which has emerged in a national political leadership and from a national outlook from that perspective. So I think full marks to the fact that the government understood the efficacy and the strategic outcome could accrue if you had an offensive capability. So and when you, unlike the past, this time around, when I think it's been made absolutely clear that there were no constraints and restraints placed on the service, and yes, it showed its outcomes. So I think this is a welcome change. It's a doctrinal change. It's a entirely different sort of offensive strategic outlook, where offensive air power especially, and combined with offensive air defense, they are like twin brothers. You can't do one without the other. And I think the not just the Indian government, the Indian strategic community, the military, I think the world is going to see this as an entirely different approach of employment of air power. And I think we have sent benchmarks, I think, which is going to be studied probably internationally now. So full marks to the government, full marks to the Indian Air Force. And I think this is the way to go for in the future.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Choudhary, for your time and your thoughts. And for our viewers on Chakra News, I spoke with Air Marshal Choudhary a few days ago on my show. It's going to drop on the Sandeep Unnithan show on the Chakra News channel very shortly. Do stay tuned to hear more of Air Marshal Choudhary. He's one of India's finest air scholars when it comes to air power, and you must read his books. He's written extensively on the subject of air power. And you can, of course, like I said, watch him for a longer session on the Sandeep Unnithan show on the Chakra News channel. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sandeep. Pleasure always. Thank you very much indeed.